Hi, I'm Japheth Doe with Battle Arms Development, and I'm here to give you an overview of our BAD PDW and our BAD 5.56 compact weapon systems, how to use them, where the controls are, and how to maintain them. So let's jump straight into it, and we're going to talk about the controls on the BAD PDW first, because there's a couple of extras on here that are not on the BAD 5.56. So very first thing, whenever handling any firearm, you want to make sure that the muzzle is always pointed in a safe direction with your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. And also, whenever you're ready to use one, be sure to have a good pair of ear protection and eye protection. All right, so let's pick this guy up here. So starting from the front, of course, we have the muzzle end, and we have our proprietary M-LOK handguard. This is designed to protect the wearer or the operator from heat buildup from the barrel, but this knurl here is also designed as a hand stop to prevent your hand from going in front of the muzzle when firing. You want to make sure that you always keep your thumb, fingers away from the muzzle, because there's going to be gases that blow backwards. You can get debris. You want to prevent injury. So that's designed to protect your hand both from heat and from getting in front of the muzzle. Something else to protect your hands, you always want to have a good pair of shooting gloves. As we move back, this is the dust cover. When not in use and the bolt forward, you can flip this up to protect the internals from getting dust. Here is the magazine release. You can press that and it will release the magazine. Insert the magazine fully and it holds it in place. This is the ambidextrous bolt release, which, in tandem with the charging handle, when you pull that backwards, you'll see that the dust cover flipped open by itself. Because this is an empty magazine, the bolt hold open held the bolt to the rear. To release the bolt and to charge the weapon with a loaded magazine, you would depress this, and it will send the bolt forward. Next is this selector switch. On a semi-automatic SBR, you would only have two positions. Right now, this is in the safe position, and with it in the safe position, you can apply pressure to the trigger. We want to make sure that we have the rifle pointed in a safe direction. It does not release the hammer. Now when we switch that to semi-auto, this is now in fire, so if I was to pull the trigger, it would release the hammer, and if there was a round in the chamber, it would go off. For those who are in law enforcement or military, if this has a third position, you would rotate it 180 degrees, and that would give you full automatic. Now with full auto fire, you would hold the trigger down and it would continue to fire until the trigger is depressed. Go ahead and flip that back over to safe. Moving further back, the stock. So this is a compact stock system. As you can see, it's much, much shorter than most conventional rifles. To release and extend the stock, the latch is right here. And you would just either press that with your thumb, hold that in, and pull it all the way to the rear. The stock has multiple positions, starting with fully collapsed, 1, 2, and 3. You can quickly release the stock by reaching over with your hand, pressing firmly on the latch button, and pulling, and you can fully extend the stock. Up above, we already demonstrated this, but just for clarification, this is the charging handle. The charging handle is what you would use to either charge the weapon or clear in the event of a malfunction. You can use this to chamber check, make sure that there's no rounds in the chamber if you're not ready to fire, and on an empty magazine, lock the bolt to the rear. When you release the magazine, the bolt will remain locked to the rear until it is released. So we flip to the opposite side. The PDW has fully ambidextrous controls. So we'll show one more time, the empty magazine. On the left side of the rifle, you have a magazine release that can be actuated with your trigger finger, right here. Press that and we release the magazine. As well as a bolt release and bolt hold open that can also be actuated with your trigger finger or thumb, depending on how you load the rifle. To operate the bolt hold open with the bolt closed, you would use the charging handle, pull the bolt to the rear, press that with your trigger finger, and then release the charging handle. And as you can see, the bolt is now locked open. Go back to this side, and you can see we also have the selector switch for safe, fire, and full auto for those applicable. Now I'll show how to actually load and charge the weapon. This one is chambered in 300 blackout, so we have some 300 blackout dummy rounds. Alright, so we're going to set the rifle down for a minute here, leave it in safe, make sure the bolt is open, and we'll keep the muzzle pointed in a safe direction. So we'll pick up the magazine, and we'll just load a couple of these in. So you're going to take your cartridge, and with your thumb, just press straight down. Now this is a 30 round magazine. I only have 4 snap caps here, but that's enough to demonstrate how to load. So you'll do that up to 30 times. Once your magazine is loaded, insert the magazine fully, slap the bottom to make sure that it's fully seated, it's not going to fall out, and then using either the manual bolt release here, the bolt release on this side, or the charging handle, you can release the bolt and charge the weapon. It's now ready to fire, but it's in safe, so we want to make sure that our finger is off the trigger. Go ahead and extend the stock, bring ourselves on target, and it's ready to fire. To clear the weapon, we would remove the magazine, and then with the charging handle, manually eject the case. We make sure that it's clear, and then depress that paddle and lock the bolt open. The weapon is now clear and it is safe. All right, and you'll notice that our safety selectors are ambidextrous. You can select from both sides. And one of the nice things about that is that the levers themselves are actually swappable from side to side. So it depends on your strong hand. Right now this rifle is set up for a right-handed shooter, which is why we have the short lever on the left, or sorry, the right side of the gun, and the long lever on the left side of the gun. And the reason for that is your thumb, if you're a right-handed shooter, is going to be on the left side, and you can actuate the selector with your thumb. But if you're a left-handed shooter, if you're trying to use your thumb on the right side and you have the long lever in place, then that long lever is going to interfere with your knuckle. So if you're a left-handed shooter, you can actually swap the lever side for the short side on this one and the long side on the opposite, and it's really easy to do using just a T10 Torx key. And you'll just unscrew each lever. These will slide off, they're dovetail onto the center. So you'll unscrew that, slide this down, do the same for the opposite side, and then just slide the appropriate lever back on, tighten the screw back down to about 5 to 6 inch-pounds, and you're good to go. Something else is our magazine release. So a lot of people think that this paddle is one piece or it's a one-piece button. It's actually 2. And the 2 pieces are held together with, again, a dovetail on the base and a small set screw. And if you ever need to remove this, the first thing you'll have to do is to remove this paddle. So I'll show you how to do that. Again, using a 1/16 Allen key, really, really small. You want to remove that top set screw. And it's really, really small, so it's best to keep the Allen key and the screw together once you get them out. There aren't too many threads. Oh, and it popped out on me. Let's keep those, and then you'll just wiggle the paddle a little bit, and that'll expose the base. Once the base is exposed, you can use a punch, anything small, cylindrical, pencil eraser. You would depress that fully to the opposite side, and then you would unscrew the base with the actual magazine catch itself. That would rotate counterclockwise to unscrew. And then to put that back together, you would just slide the paddle back on, and that actually holds in place really well even without the set screw. That's not going to pop off on you. The set screw is basically there just to ensure that it doesn't accidentally slide out. So pop that back into place and tighten that down. And then one of the final unique features on our guns is our adjustable pistol grip. And the reason it's adjustable is there's lots of different shooters, lots of different shooting styles, different hands and positions. We found that for the small compact weapons, it's best to have it at a most vertical angle. This one's at 17 degrees. It's much more natural. But in case you want to adjust it, there are two other positions to adjust this out from. And the way you do that is you would take a 5/32 Allen key, and you just loosen the pistol grip screw. You don't have to loosen it all the way, just enough to release the base of the pistol grip. As soon as you can have play to move it between the positions, that's as far out as you need to go. It doesn't need to come out any further than that. So here's the 17 degree, that is 25 degrees, kind of a middle of the road, more for a long gun, and then 33 degrees, which is as far out as it goes. And that's something for bench rest or prone type shooting. Once you have it in the position that you want, just go ahead and hold that back in place, take your 5/32 Allen wrench, and you just tighten that back down. All right, so we got that back in place. And now, lastly, just want to show with the bolt and the bolt carrier and the BAD PDW system, that buffer with the captive spring can kind of give you a false reading when you're going to manually lock it back or when you're going to charge the weapon. So as you're drawing it back, you'll notice it feels like it's bottomed out, but the bolt is still exposed. You actually still have about 1/2 of an inch of travel left before the bolt is all the way to the rear. So when you're manually trying to lock the bolt back, that's important to remember, because it's possible when manually locking it back, if you don't get it all the way, you can actually catch it in the middle. And that's bad. You don't want that there, because then the bolt itself is not fully locked back. There's not a whole lot holding it in place. If you're trying to clear a jam, or if you're trying to chamber a round, it's not far enough back to actually pick up the next round, and it's not necessarily far enough back to clear a jam, and it can slip loose on you very easily, and that could be your finger. So that's bad. So when you're locking it back fully, it's important to remember to get to that point of resistance where it feels like it's bottomed out, and then just pull a little bit harder, and then you're ready to lock the bolt back. You'll know that the bolt is fully locked back because the actual bolt lugs are going to be mostly, the bottom of the bolt lugs are going to be covered by the bolt stop itself, and it's going to be locked fully to the rear. It's not going to be caught in the middle between the bolt and the carrier itself. And you can tap it and it doesn't immediately fly forward. And one of the other minor things to be aware of on the PDW, so the cheek rest is held on with these 4 screws. And if you're making adjustments, it's important to note that if you've got the cheek rest or the stock in the fully collapsed position, when you're putting the cheek rest back on, you want to make sure that this is fully seated downward, because when you're drawing back on the charging handle, when tightening these screws up, it can have a tendency to lift back up. And if it lifts back up too far, that can interfere with the charging handle and stop it in the collapsed position. So you want to make sure that when you're tightening these screws down, that the cheek rest is also staying flat against the buffer tube so that you don't have any obstruction in trying to charge the weapon in the collapsed position. In the fully extended position, that's not an issue at all. There's all that space, but it is just something to be aware of when the stock is collapsed and you're trying to use it quickly without having to extend the stock.